Hey guys, welcome back. It is week number 3 in the month of gentleness, also known as October. We are talking about gentleness as a character trait. And gentleness seems to be one of those character traits that we think is a non-issue, or maybe it's not relevant, because we have this idea that to be gentle is to be mild or tender-hearted. And that is true. But gentleness is more applied to our soul and more applied to our spirit than it is our physical structure or physical situation. So we're going to talk about gentleness during seasons of change. And a season of change could be anything from going from high school to college, or maybe college to adulting life. Maybe we're getting married, having a baby, starting a new job, or it could be a situation all the way up to retirement or the passing, of a loved one. So seasons of change can be anything that is just something out of the routine, something that is different in some way. It could even be a growth period in your life. We all have issues, we all have our stuff that we need to grow from. And so sometimes that season of change could be a time where we say, I'm really going to dig into this boundary issue. I'm really going to dig into this people-pleasing or passive-aggressive issue and really work on it. That is also a season of change. And during these seasons of change, we need to be gentle with ourselves. This is where gentleness really shines as a character trait. So we are in the month of October. Halloween is 2 weeks away, and you'll notice that there is a Christmas tree in my background. I also need to be gentle with myself because I had a self-imposed deadline that I was going to do a weekly video every single week of the year 2019, all 12 months. And so my goal was to have 52 videos by the end of the year. I am now 7 weeks behind. So I was great up until July, and then life started getting very busy. And the season definitely changed. There's a lot of upheaval, and I have just gotten further and further behind. And so I need to be gentle with myself as I try to cram the test and reach that deadline by the end of the year. So during these seasons of change, no matter what it is, being gentle with ourselves is a way to get us through this time in a healthy way. So it's the way that we handle this situation that could make or break everything around us. It could, make or break our future plans, or the relationships that we're in when we're going through this season of change. And a lot of it has to do with our expectations. And we have this tendency to set expectations in a way that is more of a standard, or more of a way of us saying should. So if I say I should be through the grief process sooner, or I should attain this job sooner, or I should be in a certain place in my life, by a certain time. When we start placing these types of harsh expectations on ourselves, basically what we're doing is setting ourselves up for failure. These are different than goal setting. Goal setting is a completely different animal. Goal setting is when you work with yourself as opposed to against yourself. And when we set expectations are not the same as goal setting. And expectations is what we think will happen in the future. But oftentimes it's not just what we think is going to happen. We take expectations to a higher level and say this will happen in the future. And oftentimes those expectations are not set in reality, or they don't allow for reality to happen if there's traffic, or if there's a fire or something. And so if we can take a look at our expectations and set them in a way that is gentle to ourselves, we're going to be much better off. And what it looks like to be gentle with ourselves in a season of change is to set an expectation that, so say for example, if we're having a baby, we can say, I expect that there's going to be times that I'm not going to know what to do. I expect there's going to be times when I'm really tired. I expect that my schedule is going to completely change, and I may not always get what I want. If we're starting a project, say that we have this goal that we're doing, I expect that when I get to the middle of the project, I'm going to get really tired, and I'm probably going to say, what the heck was I thinking? and I don't know if I can do this, and I'm not qualified. If we set the expectations in a way that flows with our normal human emotions, then when we get to that normal human emotional spot, we're not going to be surprised. There won't be any need for us for that internal judge to kind of beat ourselves up. There won't be any need to say, oh, what was I thinking? This was so stupid. I don't know why I did this. I should just stop. I should just quit. If we expect that we're going to come to a place that we're tired, we can change that internal dialogue to say, you know what, I knew this was coming. And there's nothing wrong with that. I knew that I get really excited about things, and then halfway through I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can finish this. If we expect that to come, then we can change the dialogue in our internal judge to be gentle with ourselves and say, it's okay. We knew this time was coming, so let's just get through it. And then we can give ourselves a pep talk to keep moving and to finish the project or to stay up. I remember when my daughter was born, she just did not want to stay in the crib. She wanted to be with me. And so, of course, all the books said, no, you can't have your baby in bed. You can't, you might smother them. You might roll on top of them. It's really dangerous. And so I would nurse her, and I would change her diaper, and then I would literally get her, this far from the mattress, back in her crib, and she would just start screaming, and we'd start the whole process all over again. And I'd have to walk her around the room, and then I'd have to, feed her and change her diaper. And, finally I just said, forget it. Neither one of us are sleeping. This is craziness. So, and I was definitely not gentle with either one of us during that time. But as soon as I allowed gentleness to come, as soon as I allowed myself to say, okay, this is not working. So I tucked her in bed with me. I'm not a mover in my sleep. I stay in one position, put her on the side opposite, my husband, because he's all over the place. And we both slept all through the night. So the moral of the story is that if we can set ourselves to expect that we are going to need help, that we're not going to have all the answers, that it's going to hurt sitting around the Thanksgiving table without our loved one. It's going to hurt at Christmas time when they're not here. The grieving process is a surprise. It comes out of nowhere. Some days we're fine. Some days we're turning into a complete puddle. If we expect that, it's going to be a much smoother process, and we're not going to feel the need to beat ourselves up. Gentleness is the key to replenish our soul. It's the key to replenish our spirit. And it's a way that we can replenish other people's soul and spirit when they are going through a season of change. Maybe it's a personal growth process, which, by the way, we have to practice. It's those emotional muscles that we have to practice day in and day out in order to get stronger, in order to actually make a change, right? Because when we change our thoughts, then we can change our behaviors. And when we change our behaviors, then we can change our future. But it takes time. We have to be gentle with ourselves during that process, because we have to wait for someone to cross our boundary before we can practice setting that boundary. And someone may not cross our boundary for 2-3 days or 2 or 3 weeks. And so we have to wait for that time, and then say, here they come again, here they crossing my boundary again. So now I have another opportunity to practice saying no. And it's hard. It's really hard to set a boundary, but we practice it. And if we don't get it right the first time, then 2-3 weeks later, here that person comes again, crossing our boundary again. Maybe it's a neighbor. We have another chance to practice. And we're gentle with ourselves during that time of transition, during that season of change, when changing our behavior or adapting to a new situation is just so hard. If we're expecting that it's going to be uncomfortable and that we're going to have some distress, then when we get there, we can be gentle and give ourselves a hug and a pep talk and remind ourselves that hope springs eternal. So take care, you guys. I will see you next week in week number 4 in gentleness in October. Take care.